every cell in the body needs energy from molecules in the food. We can better explain the transportation in animals by giving the example of the transportation of food from villages to the cities. We import food like vegetables and fruits in the trucks, and of course the trucks travel on the highway. So circulatory system can be compared to this example, and trucks can be an analogy to the blood which carries the food, and the highways can be compared to the blood vessels which carry the blood. So now we will explain the transport in different groups of animals. Hydra is the simplest organism, as we have studied earlier, and transportation in Hydra is very simple. It takes place with the help of diffusion, and the food materials are taken in, or the gaseous exchange take place by simple diffusion, and they use the tentacles which are around the body, and to take in the food particles, and they also undergo the process of endocytosis by the endodermal cells for the food exchange. So transport in this case is very simple, and similar is the case with the transport in plain area. It is a flat body, and transport in this case occurs by the extensive branching of inside the body, and the food particles or the gaseous exchange simply take place with the help of diffusion. But when we study the more complex organisms, we can see that there is a need of a circulatory system, and here we can see that there are two types of circulatory system. Simpler one is the open circulatory system, and more complex is closed circulatory system. So in open circulatory system, there is no distinction between the circulatory fluid which is blood and the extracellular fluid of the body which is lymph. So this fluid is called hemolymph. We can see in the case of insects, the heart is a muscular tube that pumps hemolymph throughout a network of channels and cavities in the body. The fluid then drains back in the central cavity. And in case of a closed circulatory system, the circulatory fluid or blood is always enclosed within blood vessels. They transport blood away from and back to a pump which is called the heart. And in earthworm, we can see that dorsal vessel is present, and we can see here the dorsal vessel, and this actually contracts rhythmically to function as a pump, and blood is pumped through these 5 lateral hearts, and it is the function of the ventral vessel to transport the blood posteriorly until it re-enters the dorsal blood vessels. You can see the ventral blood vessel here. So now we will discuss the functioning of a vertebrate circulatory system. It offers many advantages and it has many functions. Number one is transportation, and transportation in case of respiratory functioning is that of gases like carbon dioxide and oxygen. Blood transport carbon dioxide and oxygen, and in case of nutritive function, it carries various metabolites or various food materials which are digested in the digestive system, and they are broken into smaller particles. So the blood transport these nutritive particles to all parts of the body or all cells of the body. And in case of excretory function, they actually carries the excretory substances like waste, and these waste are actually they are filtered in the kidneys, and then they are transported out of the body in urine. In case of a regulation, they regulate hormone transport. Various hormones which are required in different parts of the body are transported via the blood, or particularly circulatory system, and they also regulate temperature. For example, if the outer temperature is colder, it results in the vasoconstriction or constriction or squeezing of the vessels, and due to this the warmer blood moves inside the body. And in case of a warmer temperature outside, the opposite occurs, and they actually the vessels they expand, and as a result of expansion the warmer air or warmer temperature is excreted out of the body actually. And they also have a protective function. They have a role in blood clotting. We know that they prevent the flow of blood or extra flow of blood when there is a cut in the skin and in vessels actually. And they also offer immune defense, and for example they excrete antibiotics, or they produce antibiotics for immune defense, and they also engulf various bacteria by the phagocytic process. Now we will see transport in different group of animals, actually the more complex group of animals. First of all, we will see the fish heart. As we know that development of gills by fishes required a more efficient pump, and in fishes we can see the evolution of a two chamber pump heart. The fish heart is actually a tube with 4 chambers which are arranged one after the other. The first 2 chambers are sinus venosus and atrium here, and these are actually the collection chambers, while the second 2, the ventricle and the conus arteriosus, are pumping chambers. So after blood leaves the conus arteriosus, it actually moves through the gills and it flows through a network of arteries to the rest of the body. Then it returns to the heart through the veins, as we can see here. So this is the circulation in fish, and now we will see the next group, which is the amphibian heart. Here we can see that there is a more advanced circulation than that of fish, and we can see the advent of lungs here, and there are 2 types of circulation. Number 1 is between heart and the lungs, which is called as pulmonary circulation, and between the heart and the rest of the body is the systemic circulation. So we can see that it is more complex and it has 2 circulations, and the oxygenated blood from the lungs is kept relatively separate from the deoxygenated blood from the rest of the body by incomplete divisions within the heart. And in amphibian heart there are 2 atria, right and left, but there is 1 ventricle, and there is actually no separation between the ventricle, but the blood is in any way prevented from mixing in the ventricles. And then there is a group after the amphibian, which is reptile. In reptiles there is partially or separation, or there is a septa which separates the 2 ventricles. But in case of mammals and the birds, as they have to maintain the endothermy, there is efficient circulation and there is complete separation of the ventricles. There are 2 ventricles, right and the left, and there is complete separation in the blood of ventricles, and there are also other 2 atria, right and left, which are also completely separated, and the increased efficiency is of course due to the endothermy. And now we can see here the comparison of the fishes and the most reptilians and crocodile, birds and mammal heart. We can see here that there is the evolution has just started in the fishes, and then in most reptiles there are 2 atria, but there is 1 ventricle, and while in case of crocodile, birds and mammals there are 2 atria and there are 2 ventricles. And it is more advanced type of circulation in birds and mammals, and it is of course due to the high metabolic rate or due to the maintenance of endothermy. So we have seen that there is a complexity from as we go from simple organism to the higher organisms in terms of transportation for the food or the other essential materials which are required in the body.